Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from wherever you are joining us from. My name is Ana Erika Lareza. I am the chair of Youth Global Network, and I will be your moderator today. And I'm deeply honored to welcome you all to the first dialogue of the season 2 of our Future of Evaluation series. Just a few quick reminders as we begin. If you are joining us via LinkedIn Live, please feel free to share your reflections, questions, and answers in our prompts in the comment section. And for those who are in Zoom, please use the Q&A function or the chat box for any questions and insights. Zoom translation and live caption features are also available if you prefer to follow the discussion in another language. So today is a very special day as we are gathering in observance of the World Youth Skills Day. As evaluation evolves in response to rapid technological advancements, growing complexity, and interconnected global challenges, the competencies required of young and emerging evaluators are drastically changing. Which brings us to today's core question. What future fit skills are essential for young evaluators to lead tomorrow's dynamic evaluation landscape? Beyond traditional methods, we need to look at emerging competencies like systems thinking, AI literacy, foresight, and adaptive evaluation methodologies. Today, we are joined by experienced practitioners and champions to reflect on how capacity development and mentorship can prepare the next generation to navigate uncertainty and contribute to an inclusive and future-oriented world. To kick things off, we want to hear from our audience with a quick fill in the blank exercise. And you already can see on your screen the QR code, most especially for those who are in the LinkedIn space. As for those who are in Zoom, you may use the poll and quizzes feature of Zoom to participate in the quiz. And so our question or the statement that we need to fill in the blank today is, the evaluators of tomorrow will be valued not for what they know, but for how well they can blank. So again, for those who want to participate, you may use the poll and quizzes tab in the Zoom. And for those who are in LinkedIn, you may use the QR code being shared here in the screen. So please do not worry about getting a perfect academic answer. There are absolutely no wrong answers for this question. We just want to see everyone's raw and insightful ideas. And I know it takes a second to type the answers out. So take your time, whether you are a seasoned evaluator or starting your journey in the field, your perspective is exactly what we want to see. Okay, so there are a few answers that's starting to roll in. Please do not hesitate to share your thoughts. So some of the few responses that we have received. So again, the question is, the evaluators of tomorrow will be valued not for what they know, but how well they can use evidence to influence decision makers, navigate new technologies, including AI, generate meaningful evidence for change, articulate their evidence, or evaluate in an innovative way and adapt with AI. It seems like most of our responses are related to technological changes in AI. And then, of course, there are those that responses related to adapting, being able to be flexible, and being able to respond to complex changes. Okay, there you go. So thank you everyone for filling in the quiz and providing your responses. These are very fantastic inputs. So please do keep these ideas in mind as we see how we compare your response to what our panel thinks. So today, we are joined by distinguished guests who will unpack today's theme from their own unique perspective. So I'm very happy to introduce to you our panelists for today. So our first speaker is Kaitlyn Blaser Mapitsa, Associate Professor at the Wits School of Governance in South Africa. Kaitlyn, could you kindly join us and say hello to our audience? There you go. And then our next speaker is Zach Tilton, Evaluation Specialist at Merle Tech Initiative. Hi, Zach. And lastly, we have Shashid Har, M&E Lead at HubForge Global Impact Network and the Pillar Lead under Evaluate Global Network's Task Force on Youth and Evaluation. Welcome, Shashid Har. Hello. So we'll first begin with you, Caitlin. So from your perspective, what future fit skills are essentials for young evaluators? Could you provide perhaps a concrete example from your work and specific skill you draw from it? Go ahead.
Sure. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who's joined today. In my view, one of the most important skills an evaluator can have, and one of the things that really sets evaluation apart from cognate disciplines, is an evaluator's need to serve as a connector and a translator, not necessarily a technical one across, languages or platforms, but across different belief systems, different ideologies, and different political positionings. And I think now, as we see increasing divisions across the world, not in what the data says, but in how we interpret it and the value systems that sit behind it, I think empathy and an ability to see a system from multiple perspectives is one of the most important skills an evaluator can bring, because that allows the data creators and the data users to come together and allow for a meaningful use of data for decision making.
Thank you very much, Kathleen. What about you, Zach? What do you think?
Well, 10 years ago, I was a youth development volunteer in Morocco with the
Yeah.
Peace Corps. And part of our work was preparing youth for the world of work. And that has completely shifted. Today, young professionals, especially evaluators, I would say, need to learn how to experiment, for one, with new and emerging technologies and to discern which ones are right for them and which ones they feel comfortable using. Two, learn how to verify those outputs of new and emerging technologies like artificial intelligence. And then three, because new technologies are becoming more and more advanced at evaluation adjacent tasks, such as data analysis and other tasks that we do maybe on a day-to-day basis, evaluators should lean into the really evaluation specific role and tasks that we have at hand, evaluative reasoning, judging, grading, apportioning, scoring, all these things that make us have our agency and determine what's good and what has merit, really leaning into that and maybe leaving some of the other technical work for the machines.
Very interesting perspective, Zach. Thank you for sharing that. And Shashid Har, what do you think?
I would like to build on what other panelists mentioned. I resonate with a couple of points there. I think it's important, one, to keep up with ever-changing, evolving methods, knowledge that's happening out there. It's changing the landscape very fast, and it's important to keep up with it. But at the same time, what I also see is there are a couple of points which I think is very important. The first one is like how close you stand to the work that's happening on the ground. I would say be a practitioner, spend some time designing, implement programs, understand the complexity of what's actually happening from the diverse, different stakeholders who are part of the program implementation. I think that would help you coming to the second point, which is connecting the people around the work. I think it will enable one to facilitate better conversation. It will help to see the different perspectives each stakeholder comes to the room. I think it will also help one navigate and find the common ground, I think, which is one of the most difficult things I have faced in a lot of the work that I do. I think ultimately that drives the value of the evaluation, the value that it produces. And the last point is, I think giving back to the field. There's a lot more evaluations that happens. I see the same repetitive evaluations keep happening in the same geography by multiple organizations. I think how do we sort of leverage each other's value, the findings that what's what's not working. So yeah, share methods, share learnings, build community of practices. So think beyond the project, I
I have
guess.
another one.
That's what I would like to share.
Thank you very much, Shashidhar. These are actually very insightful and thought-provoking perspectives, and in a way, very complementary. Shashidhar shared more on on a very grounded and a more basic level as an evaluator on the importance of being on the ground, being able to see the evidence with your own eyes, being able to hear them yourselves rather than just looking at it from a distant perspective as a very external identity to what we are evaluating. And that connects to what Kaitlyn is saying is about being connected, having empathy, and, being able to appreciate different perspectives. And that's not possible if you are not on the ground. And, these are core, it seems like a core that's emerging right now that's needed for evaluators. But at the same time, with the emerging technological advances and complexities that we are saying, Zach is correct. We need to be able to experiment, to explore as well, and see these technological advancements and how we could further improve our skills as evaluators. So thank you very much for those perspectives. So to shake things up a bit, we are gonna move into a little bit of a debate round, and I'm going to introduce a statement designed to challenge our assumptions about our profession. So our bold statement for today is the greatest risk to the evaluation profession is not the lack of data. It is the lack of future-ready evaluators equipped to question, adapt, innovate, and lead. So for our audience, we would love for you all to share your opinions and thoughts in the chat. So please go ahead and do that. We would love to hear everyone's ideas, both on Zoom and LinkedIn. We would be very happy to hear them. So what about our panelists? Where do you guys stand on this? Of course, you're welcome to argue against, for, or offer a more nuanced view. And I highly encourage you to ask each other questions to clarify stances in relation to what is required to shape a future fit evaluation landscape. So maybe Shashidhar being, I know that Shashidhar and I work closely within Eval Youth, and being I don't know, but most recent YE, perhaps you would like to take the floor first and share your thoughts.
Thank you, Rika. I mean, it's a very interesting statement for me. Like, if you were to search, everybody says there's no lack of data, there's no lack of data. And when the AI came in, the first question I asked was how many monitoring and evaluation professionals, how many evaluators are there in in my city, in my country? And AI couldn't answer it. So there is, I mean, if you go and type this question in ChatGPT, Claude, or any of the AI platforms, like you won't get a straight answer for it. So I think there is a lack of fundamental data of the ecosystem in itself. So I think more than worrying about a lack of future-ready evaluators, I think there is an earlier, more fundamental problem that we don't even know or understand the scale or the diversity or the size of our own ecosystem. Is what I've experienced. So I think it's important that, I mean, if we can't map our own profession landscape, we can't grow it. And we cannot connect emerging evaluators with be it mentors, be it practicing opportunities, or be it career pathways. But currently, I think it's one of the biggest problems I foresee as one of the practitioners. And my experience with having a lot of discussion with fellow young and emerging evaluators. So I think the biggest risk, like I said, isn't the data gap. It's also the fundamental data, but also it's an ecosystem gap, I would say. So yeah, you can't grow the next generation of evaluators if you can't see the system they're going into, basically. So I think that's my point of view.
Thank you, Shishidhar. Zach, what do you think on that end?
I completely agree. It was pretty much my argument here that the data that we have is, or the question about, is there enough data? Maybe it's a different type of question. And exactly right, Shashidhar, is that you have the ecosystem data, the data about supply and demand, because I think this statement, for me, at first blush, I want to agree with it, and I do, feel in my bones that I agree with it. We need strong young and emerging evaluators. Um, but I, like you, question whether or not we really know, and if that is the case in terms of the supply side logics, right? Because oftentimes that's what we do as capacity development professionals, those who work with young and emerging evaluators. We're constantly thinking about the supply side and often neglecting to think about the demand and how do we develop and ensure that there's strong demand. I think part of that is it's a chicken and the egg because when you have really good quality supply of evaluators and evaluative products, then the demand goes up, right? And so I can see the logic there. But I wholeheartedly agree and would like to echo that having more of an understanding of the marketplace, of the ecosystem, definitely serves us as a profession to make sure that we're checking our own assumptions. And I think that's probably the last thing I'll say is that, for anytime evaluators get to eat our own dog food, and to apply our own evaluative logic to our career and our profession that we apply to others. I think that's a great impulse there. Over.
Thank you, Zach. I mean, it will be interesting, Kathleen, from your perspective from the academe on what you think on this.
Sure, thanks. This question reminded me a little bit, the kind of is it data or is it people binary of, are qualitative or quantitative methods better? And I think this is another case where it's a little bit of a false binary because it's very easy to forget that the data comes from people, right? And what data we have and don't have are based on political decisions, on the allocation of resources in some areas and not others. And I think just like Shashidhar pointed out earlier, the way that we build data systems and not look at each evaluation as an independent activity that's separate from the context, from the research, from all of the information that we have in the sector is ultimately, the way that we can address both questions at the same time. So in my view, it isn't necessarily data or analysis. It's about how can we bring the two together in an integrated system that will allow us to move both forward together.
Thank you very much, Kathleen. I think it's also quite interesting because, like, from my perspective as an evaluator, so as the chair of Evaluate Global, really navigating the systems and the environment, and also understanding, the environment surrounding the evaluation exercise itself is something that is also quite hard to explain to colleagues within the network, especially YEEs. And like most of the trainings that we have are very focused on methodologies, approaches, frameworks, but with regards to certain practical skills of being able to analyze the environment, or even perhaps just the evaluation landscape, as Zach has explained, you know the the supply and demand, and understanding that is also something that's not inherent in YEEs as they enter or perhaps gain experience in evaluation. So I'm wondering, Shashidhar and Zach, if you guys have anything else to add, perhaps. Any other
I'll
points
maybe
to take this?
take a stab.
Sure.
I think, one thing that we can think about just is that, we have a really rich tradition of research on evaluation.
Mm.
And that is for those who are unfamiliar, for basically doing descriptive work about our own profession and practical based issues. And I think this is an opportunity where we can apply, there's been some good studies in the past about the marketplace, about the ecosystem. Unfortunately, some of those are vectored toward the Western Hemisphere, and less about this global movement that we're thinking about that we need to be able to deliver on the Agenda 2030, which requires a global workforce of evaluators. And so I think that that's a tall research on evaluation agenda to take any bite out of that kind of ecosystem mapping, Shashidhar had mentioned. But I think that we can draw on that rich tradition for that if we were to say, you know what, we really feel like we need a different type of data to be able to deliver on this promise of this kind of supply side logic of having equipped young professional evaluators. Over.
Thank you. Thank you, Zach. So Shidhar, do you have anything else to add?
So just one more, I think, point to add on to this. Uh, I mean, we have a different systemic actors in the ecosystem. The question is, like, what is an incentive? Like, what enables for everybody sort of to come together to be? It's a global practice, right? It's one individual, one institution cannot be able to pull this off, and therefore, what drives everybody to come together? What enables? I think there's some successful things that have happened. I think it's important for us to learn from them and try to experiment. Like Zach mentioned, I think it's the iterative process, being more intent, bringing more resources. I think and keep the dialogue going. I think that becomes one of the cornerstones. I would say.
Thank you very much, everyone. And these are really fascinating takes. And of course, like we can dig really deeper into these, thoughts. Like just even, on the side of, for example, my case between me and Shashidhar being in Asia Pacific region, just like being able to be equipped with skill sets is such a difficult endeavor in the first place because we do not have institutionalized ways of getting education and skills, getting a degree or like, a more formalized educational environment to become an evaluator. So these are the things we can go very much more in depth. But maybe this would be a time for us to take a deeper dive into other key themes that we want for our panel to discuss further. So one of the biggest things is perhaps with you, Shashidhar, as YEs, and I've also mentioned of our lack of, institutionalized environment to learn as an evaluator. From your perspective right now, how can universities or perhaps evaluation associations, employers or senior evaluators better prepare or support young professionals to acquire these future fit skills and transition into leadership roles as well within the evaluation profession?
Thanks, Erica. I think I would like to connect this to the point I made earlier. Uh, so if you want future-ready evaluators, we need a future-ready ecosystem that enables it, right? And like I said, like no single institution can pull this off. So, and the first step would be, to map the ecosystem. I think to name a few, which is the connection itself, right? Universities, evaluation associations, senior evaluators. I think each of them plays their own role in it. I think the key question or the key opportunity for us is how do we ensure it's all connected? How do we ensure that somebody who made up their mind want to explore monitoring and evaluation from the starting point? What is their starting point? Where do they enter? Is it do they have to do PhD or do they just join a grassroots organization and probably start practicing? But again, like who is going to provide the mentorship? I think it's important that each of these institutions and individuals to sort of bring together, build a connection, strengthen the connection to sort of build a synergy, cohesion among them towards a common objective or common agenda. I think that becomes one of the key. Yeah, I think it won't work in isolation. I think we have seen enough. Especially, I'm somebody who works in the grassroots organizations a lot. I see a lot of difference in what's happening at the global level and how much of it actually reaching to the grassroots level. There's very little that actually reaches grassroots level, and there's no let's just if one were to even decide, okay, I want to know something, and there's very little accessibility to the information, and how do I actually grow in monitoring and evaluation? How do I strengthen at the grassroots level? So I think there is more collaboration is needed, more synergies are needed, more dialogue needs to happen. But again, I keep coming back to the same question always, like who drives all of this? Like who enables this? What structures exist? Like what is the incentive for each of them to come together and to contribute to this larger common goal? Yeah, that's where I land. I think I land on more questions. I think the much more I dig deeper,
You
all of
did.
our more questions to discuss. Yeah.
That's very, very true. Like, like it matters. The question matters as well, right? Like, you are right. Like working, uh, we have different institutions working on this one way or the other, but it doesn't matter if like there's no collaboration and there's no cooperation in between as well. And within those institutions in the first place, who would drive that? It's a very important question, Susidhar, and it's worth noting. What about for Zach and Kathleen, like looking ahead, into the next decade? What is one skill set or mindset or capability that you believe will distinguish successful evaluators from those who would struggle to adapt into the field, and why? Go ahead, Zach. Yeah.
Great. I'm going to echo a bit of what Caitlin mentioned in her opening statement, but what I feel like is one really important skill is what Michael Scriven called being boundary spanners and being able to think about taking our transdisciplinary logic to other practice-based professions and then taking insights from those professions back to our field, much like some of the not too unlike the synthesis work that Shashidhar had talked about in terms of making sure that we're leveraging and collaborating and we're coherent and cohesive when we intervene and do our the evidence-based work. I think when evaluators can span boundaries both in terms of practice-based professions, but also in terms of the technology that we use and that we are seeing being used in these fields. Because that's one thing to think about when we're talking about digital literacy and developing the future of evaluation in terms of capacity is not only the evaluator's skill to use technology to evaluate, but to be able to talk the language and understand what's happening when they evaluate a program that used technology extensively as part of the intervention. And so both using technology and evaluating technology in our evaluation work. And I think a lot of that comes from that boundary spanning function and the connections that we make and the trying to break down those boundaries in terms of knowledge that we often have between the programmatic side and then the evidence-based side. So yeah, those are some of my thoughts on the skills of the future.
Thank you, Zach. Kathleen, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all really reinforcing each other's points in a big way. And I think I'm just going to dig a little bit deeper into, the idea of empathy as a critical evaluative competency. And I think some of the things that Shashid had pointed out around, these conversations that happen at a very high level, not reaching, people who are engaged in part of development interventions to me often reflects an inability of people within institutions to understand the contexts that other people are working within, the assumptions you make, the things you take for granted can be very different and very often, understanding different perspectives, which requires self-awareness. It requires curiosity. It requires a willingness to be wrong and be corrected and constantly learn and grow. These can be very difficult things to cultivate, but I think really critical in building evaluation practice and also building evaluation architecture. And I think a lot of this also comes back to data systems because, I mean, one of the things I always find striking in evaluation practice is how many really big picture questions there are out there that we don't have answers for. Questions about why we make the decisions we do, whether certain kinds of interventions work for, climate adaptation, for economic development. And I think as the profession grows, we have an opportunity to start our inquiry on a just slightly higher level each time as we have, stronger, more contextualized, better available data. But I think that will happen faster if we're more intentional about bringing people with different perspectives from different places together around these big issue questions and seeing each evaluation as a contribution to that.
Wow. I must say, when we were beginning and conceptualizing this dialogue, we were looking at skills. I was expecting conversations about technical skills, but now all across the board, what we're discussing is beyond technical skills. Like it's the personal growth, it's collaboration, communication, interpersonal, and skills, the way we build relations. Go ahead, Siddharth. If you wanted to add something.
Yes, something that's sort of since I've started my journey in M&A, right? So while working across a lot of organizations, like you have this tendency to solve a problem, you have some great ideas, and you want to implement, and you get limited by the scope of the work that you do. So I think one of the key highlights that I want to bring out is for all the evaluators and M&A professionals is be an entrepreneur in M&E, like, bring out those ideas, like Zach mentioned, like experiment it. Don't limit yourself to the contract or to the job description that defines you. So I think bring those entrepreneurial skills or mindset that you have. I feel like that's what pushes the boundary of the evaluation to be a better evaluator.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Siddharth. Yeah, and we are coming to essentially like similar to what Zach have shared about exploring other fields. We are in a space, in a field where we are requiring evaluators to go beyond being an evaluator, right? Just the basic, being a basic evaluator is no longer a thing. You need to have dipped your feet into multiple fields and into multiple contexts to be able to understand the complexities that you are evaluating, or at least being able to open your mind to such possibilities. And as an evaluator, prepare yourself to expect such unexpected things when we do evaluation. So we are posing a very difficult, question then to our next speaker. So today we are actually very lucky to have a feature dedicated to the youth and evaluation champion. I would like to welcome to the floor Dr. Rushik Kaushik, faculty and development in charge at the University of Delhi, which is recognized this year as a legacy champion. So welcome, Dr. Rushi, and I think we are opening a floor to a very difficult question to you. Hearing that, we're not just talking about technical skills, but going beyond it. So then, from your vantage point as a youth and evaluation champion in academia, how can then academic institutions update their programs to teach these skills, not just technical skills, the beyond skills that the panelists have highlighted? And what advice, do you have for academic institutions to make young evaluators future ready with the right skill sets to become successful in the field of evaluation?
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Anna. And thank you to our panelists for such an enriching discussion. I would also like to thank Evaluate Global Network and UNFPA Independent Evaluation Office for this Evaluate Legacy Champion Award 2026. As I listened to the conversation today, I found myself reflecting on a simple yet a very profound question, which is what kind of evaluator does the future actually need? For many years, the answer would have been, quite straightforward. We wanted evaluators who understood methodology, statistics, sampling, indicators, impact assessment. So those were the competencies that remain essential and will always form the backbone of our profession of all evaluators. But today, the world has changed. We are living in an era where decisions are increasingly influenced by artificial intelligence. Crises overlap and reinforce each other. Climate change affects livelihood. Pandemics reshape society, and also where digital technologies generate more data in a single day than previous generations encountered in years. In such a world, evaluation cannot remain static. So that is something that we need to understand. The evaluator of tomorrow cannot simply be just a technician who measures outcomes. This shift has profound implications for academia. As educators, we ask ourselves a very difficult but a very necessary question. Are we preparing our students for jobs of today, or we are preparing them for problems that don't yet have names? So this is something that we need to think about, because students sitting in our classroom today will graduate into a world where many evaluation challenges, perhaps even many evaluation tools, they have not yet seen or invented. This actually requires a completely different philosophy of education. And when I think of this shift, I feel we need to move beyond teaching methods. So traditionally, universities have been very successful in, teaching evaluation methods. We teach qualitative, quantitative techniques, monitoring frameworks, theory of change, logic framework. So all these remain indispensable. We are not questioning that. But future readiness requires us to move, beyond teaching methods. We need to think of, mindsets, teaching mindsets. So students should leave our classrooms not knowing how to evaluate, but also they need to start thinking like evaluators. They should learn curiosity, critical thinking, reflection, ethical reasoning, adaptability. Because if you look at all the methodologies, all the softwares, AI, this will continue to evolve over a period of time. But the ability to ask meaningful questions, interpret the evidence that is available critically, and make sound judgments will always remain fundamentally human. The second thing that I would like to highlight is that we need to recreate our evaluation classrooms. And I would like to highlight about my department, the Department of Development Communication and Extension at Lady Irwin College, University of Delhi, India. We have begun this journey. M&E is integrated, both at undergraduate and postgraduate curriculum. And students learn evaluation theory alongside practical applications. They do live projects, they do internships, they do partnerships with civil society organizations. They are engaged with professional networks like Evaluation Community of India and Evaluate India. So they don't just study evaluation, they experience evaluation. They interact with practitioners, they conduct research, engage with communities, participate in various evaluation conferences and workshops, because, somewhere we believe learning happens both inside and outside the classroom. But I also believe that this is not the beginning. Universities everywhere now have an opportunity to completely reimagine evaluation education, and we are also beginning to revamp this in our department now. If you ask me, if I were to redesign an evaluation curriculum today, I would organize it around 5 major competencies. Few of these have already been highlighted by our panelists today. For me, the first remains systems thinking. We need to understand that development problems these are all interconnected. A nutrition program influences education, Education affects employment. So nothing exists in isolation. So for future evaluators, we need to understand these relationships. We need to have those feedback loops. We need, unintended consequences, complexity, rather than just viewing programs as, isolated interventions. No, we cannot do that. The second one remains digital and AI literacy. So, it's been quite a few years now. We have been talking about it. So AI is definitely changing evaluation, helping us analyze large data sets, but we also need to understand that AI should never replace, I would say, evaluative judgment. So our students should learn how to work with AI rather than work for AI. So we need to understand that perspective also. The third one for us is foresight. Historically, evaluation has been backward looking. So we do ask, okay, what happened? Did the program work? With these two questions, I feel tomorrow's evaluator must also ask what could happen. Will evaluation intervention remain relevant for the next 5 years? What emerging risks should decision makers prepare for? So, evaluation must evolve from measuring the past to informing the future, which at times, is not looked at. The fourth one is, communication, which I would say is often, very often underestimated. So, evaluation findings, they have no value unless people understand them. So, future evaluators should be able to explain evidence I would say, to a minister in 2 minutes, to community people in their local language, to donors through policy brief. So, communication should not be looked as an optional skill. It is a bare, it is a professional competency, I would say. The last, which few of the panelists have also highlighted, remains collaboration. So, evaluator is not working alone anymore. Future evaluators, they will work with government, they'll work with NGOs, communities, engineers, economists, behavioral scientists, public health experts. So, the future belongs to this interdisciplinary collaboration. I was looking at the chat box, and in the chat box, one of the attendee had also mentioned in the chat that there is a lack of mentoring opportunities. Absolutely. This collaboration and hand holding is equally important. Universities should, they should create opportunities where students from different disciplines, they solve real development problems. Thankfully, in India, with the new education policy, we have this space for our students now. And when I look at, future, I often imagine a future where universities are not functioning only as teaching institute. Instead, they become innovation centers. Imagine students working with district government. They are, the government who are working to improve nutrition program. Imagine policy labs where students help ministers or ministries redesign programs. So this is something that is extremely important. So students should graduate having solved real life problems, not merely just submitting assignments and getting their grades for that. Evaluation education should become, an immersive, I would say, immersive, experiential, and collaborative experience for students. The other point that I would like to highlight is that we also need to invest in faculty, which is extremely important. Faculty members must continuously learn as well. I remember I started my journey 20 years back when I did my post graduation with just, the logic model was what I was taught. And over a period of time, if I look at my journey, I think I've come a long way. And in our department at Lady Irwin, we are constantly, working towards this. We are constantly, all the faculty members are constantly upgrading our skills. So universities should encourage educators to engage with international evaluation associations, professional networks, global conferences, because if we expect students to become future ready, our institutions must become future ready first. This is extremely important. And learning must become continuous for everyone, not just for students. So, if I were to offer a practical recommendation to universities around the world, it would be don't simply revise your curriculum every 5 years. Instead, give have some sort of a living curriculum, one that evolves alongside the profession. Invite practitioners into classroom, send students into the communities, partner with government, collaborate with UN agencies, work with VOPAs, encourage interdisciplinary teaching, obviously use AI responsibly, and teach ethics alongside innovation, and most importantly create opportunities where students learn by evaluating, not simply about evaluation. So because if I look at my students, I think confidence comes from experience, not from lectures. This is something that is extremely important. So this is I would like to conclude here, and I would again, say the future of evaluation is not shaped by just softwares, large data set. It is shaped by people. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ruchi. And fitting for, for an institution that is known as a legacy champion for engaging young evaluators within their system. Very, very well, summarized as well. You've also kindly nice and very nicely wrapped up the discussions of our panelists as well, and how to integrate that within academic institutions and how they can adopt to be future ready, so that they can produce evaluators that are actually future ready. So thank you, Dr. Ruchi. And then so now we want to also hear from our audience based on everything that we've discussed regarding future fit skills. Did anything resonate with you? So if you are here in Zoom, feel free to raise your hand or type your questions in the Q&A section. And for those tuning in and like LinkedIn, we are monitoring the comment section as well. So please feel free to include your questions there. So we are going to be looking at participants who's interested to raise their hands and share their insights or ideas that resonated with them. Go ahead, please. Feel free to raise your hand. So while we are waiting for participants who, maybe they're still, because like Dr. Ruchi's points are really a lot to take in, but very, very important to do so. Maybe we can also look into our Q&A section from Mary M. So Mary says, I recently spoke with the senior evaluator and she advised that you can't specialize in both monitoring and evaluation. Monitoring and evaluation, so separate. You must choose between the one to do your best, either the monitoring or evaluation part. So Mary is interested to hear from the panelists on what's their stance on this aspect. Does anyone have a thought on this? Kathleen, go.
Yeah.
Oh,
Go
sorry,
ahead.
like us.
Go ahead, Kathleen.
Sure. I mean, so my thinking is that specializations in monitoring and evaluation often happen a bit organically, and you don't necessarily you realize you've specialized in something until you look back and realize, oh, I know quite a lot about that. Um, and sometimes it happens through focusing on monitoring or evaluation. More likely, I think it might happen in a sector, it might happen through a method. I happened to specialize in, organizational change, not through any intention, but because I was an internal evaluator at a bunch of different organizations, and I saw the challenges and possibilities and frustrations of getting organizations to integrate data into operations. And I think, a lot of different people get that kind of view, not because they think, oh, I need to specialize in this particular way, but because they build experience and realize, where their strengths are. So I would say, yes, you probably will specialize as you become more senior in your career, but often be open to allowing it to happen organically and based on self-awareness about your strengths.
Go
Yes,
ahead, Shashidhar.
thanks, Kathleen. Just connecting it to, I think it's a very sort of question that resonates with me a lot because I didn't come from any degree as such in monitoring and evaluation. I wish I knew, Ruchi, like, back in the days, like, there is a degree you can do in monitoring and evaluation. I didn't. I come from an engineering background. And I learned a lot through a couple of courses and mostly from the practice. And this question comes a lot from a lot of young and emerging many folks, like, hey, can I specialize in monitoring or evaluation? I myself spent first 5 years calling myself as M&E, but I never did actually evaluations. I didn't know that. All I was doing was pretty much monitoring, but I was telling, hey, I'm an M&E professional. And only when I went to large scale organizations, I got exposure to, okay, there is also a field called evaluation that is completely different. That's much more deeper, bandwidth objectives and all. But I think what I my experience, what I understand is like while you also get experience through organically, if you are really interested in certain topics while you are doing monitoring and evaluation, you tend to focus on them and try to find more opportunities to grow on that. I think you can decide whether you really like certain aspects of M&E or you want to look at more broader, but also looking at the market. I think that becomes one of the key aspects. Sometimes you build expertise, but there's no market for it. So sometimes that also guides you choose in what you want to expertise in. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shashidhar. And again, like speaking earlier as well, like you can't just be one, like, one-dimensional evaluator, like in the current context that we are working in. So it does matter that you explore both, like M and E, and then if you want to specialize in one, then you can pick one depending on your environment in that case. Thank you very much, Mariam, for sharing that question, and to Kathleen and Shidhar. We have an attendee who raised their hand. I believe it's Dr. Himat from Afghanistan.
Hi, good afternoon. This is Dr. Himat, and I'm the deputy head for Afghanistan Evaluation Society. We are working, we are a network of volunteers. We are conducting various workshops for the practitioners. We are conducting assessments with local people with in various sectors, and I'm the deputy head for the association.
Thank you, Dr. Himat. And what's your question for our panelists that you would like to share?
Yeah, the question is this that I will, on behalf of the Afghan Evaluation Society, I would request if your organization can support our practitioner community in the advanced evaluation application or with some capacity building because our practitioners are really in a dire situation. So this is the request from my network, from my
Okay.
people.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Himat. We'll do that then. So maybe I have some idea, but if our panelists have some thoughts to share, you can unmute. Okay, so oh, Shashidhar, I saw you on mute. Go ahead.
I think I think the first step probably is to identify the local opportunities, local institutions. That's actually a lot of work is actually happening, at a local level. The key point is, can we identify them, bring together, and see how we can leverage? I think that could be the go-to. And also, obviously, there is a larger ecosystem available, global network or IOC, which they can connect further and try to understand what they are doing and how they can build already something that has already happened, get support in terms of resources, and probably implement. Yeah.
Thank you, Shashidhar. And like this advice actually applies not only for Afghan Evaluation Society, but also for every evaluation networks that's currently here in the room right now. So for example, for you, Dr. Himat, you feel free to, Afghan Evaluation Society is a member of a regional evaluation network called Asia Pacific Evaluation Association. If you have more pressing concerns and ideas for collaboration, feel free to reach out to APEA. And I know I'm speaking from the perspective because I'm also part of APEA, that they would be more than happy to be able to work with you on this matter. And this applies as well because like every country has their corresponding regional evaluation network. And from also from my perspective as Evaluate Global Network Chair, all of these regional evaluation networks are also working with their counterpart Evaluate regional chapters. So we are in a space at the very least that the professional networks are working with youth evaluation networks, and there is active collaboration always in every single region around the world. So just by reaching out to one, you can gain these connections that you need to be able to do the capacity building activities that you need specifically that you have identified within your network. So Dr. Himan, I hope that helped your case. We also have another question actually from Arvin, which is perhaps Dr. Ruchi, this really ties on your communication point. People are no longer reading, Arvin opens with 40% decline according to some estimates. Perhaps practitioner and implements are also reading less. How does future evaluation address this matter to make evaluation relevant or TikTok worthy? What do you think?
That's a very relevant question. Nobody these days reads a 150-page report, evaluation report. So we need to have other smart tools for that. So if you look at various UN organizations, when they evaluate their programs, they are now publishing a short video on their channels, on their LinkedIn profile. So that's one way that you have videos. The other way is also use infographics because it makes look data very easy to understand and comprehend for the audience. So this is one thing that can be easily done. And, maybe an elevator kind of speech or something like that, which works well when we are talking to our audience, is also equally important. But yes, nobody reads a 150-page report these days. We want something that is very smart and crisp because nobody has time.
Thank you, Dr. Richie. So Siddhar, go ahead.
No, I think that's something I just faced a month ago. So there was like 150, 180 pager report. Okay, nobody's going to read it. So I think there was simple experimentation done. Notebook LLM is there, so people use the audio overview to guide on what exactly people want to listen. So they created specific audio overview for the leadership team separately, operation team separately, using that report, and they used it to share it so that you don't have to record, just plug in your to audio and then listen to the evaluation, where two people are discussing about it. I think that's definitely going to be way forward, like, more audio, more video, less reading, I guess.
Thank you very much, Ashidar. And I think like it also applies, but because I believe some of the newer TORs or some organizations actually already require not just like an evaluation report, but also alternative outputs, more creative outputs. It's much more easier to read, like 1 or 2 pager briefer, a video, an infographic, as Dr. Ruchi said. So this is something that sooner or later evaluators will have to also develop as well as a professional. Some do get by hiring communication experts, but the principles within them as well is something that we need to learn as evaluators. Thank you very much, Arvin, for that. Garima also asked, thanks to the panelists for sharing the valuable experiences. What readings or resources would you recommend to make MEL systems aligned with systems thinking in development sector? Does any of our panelists would like to respond to that? Readings and resources.
I'll put, hi there, Agreement. Thanks for your question. I'm going to put something in the chat. It's a link to a new book about systems. It's from a couple of evaluators. But I think it's a great question and a great impulse to want to harmonize these different systems, because we all, as we start to get our hands dirty, we start to realize that there's a lot of disharmony and dysfunction sometimes, and that's part of our job, is to find out what cogs are squeaky as evaluators, and then apply that great it's knowledge about use and utilization, and how we can back to that question about reading and creativity and reporting, I think, which is so amazing. So one, good for you, Garima, to still be one of the 60% who are reading, or whatever that statistic is, and two, to be able to want to address that problem that you're seeing. So here's one recommendation.
Thank you. And maybe Zach, you could also answer the next question by Noel. He was like, he was planning to multitask for our dialogue, but ended up getting absorbed. So their question is, do you recommend any specific online courses that can help young evaluators deepen their skills, particularly in AI?
Just briefly, I work for an organization called the Merle Tech Initiative, and we have various trainings both in person and online, and you can go and see our training offerings on our website at merletech.org. There's other associations that are beginning to have offerings like the European Evaluation Society or American Evaluation Society. I'm seeing SAMIA offering workshops on AI. So I would recommend check out Mortec, but then also the VOPs, various VOPs, see what they have, because they are partnering with professionals who are beginning to offer these online. And feel free to reach out to me directly if you need more recommendations that are not on the spot.
Thank you very, Zach. And Bikem also kindly shared the Merle Tech website. So Noel, you could look into that. And also adding in as well, reaching out to, local evaluation networks. Usually they're also very open in recommendations on topics for capacity building. Many of these networks also have regular, webinar series or training series. And they're often open to recommendations on topics, especially if it's particularly in demand. So you might want to hit them a message in their platforms or via email. And then we also have a question from LinkedIn. Hello, Kyla Borbum. Any advice on seeking more traditional evaluation knowledge? I was originally a teacher who became a 4H agent and then found myself in program development and evaluation role. But I am constantly feeling underqualified for the evaluation portion. And I would love to become more knowledgeable on some of the traditional aspects of the evaluation field through professional development opportunities or self-study. Any responses from our speakers? Go ahead.
Yeah. So I think so. So I mean, like Zach mentioned, so I've done a lot of courses, right? And there are so many books out there, and they're too big to even go through each and every one of them. And also, like the the key point is also like you don't even remember like after a month which book you read. Something that I wanted to communicate to a lot of grassroots organizations. So I put together, all of these learnings into a single platform, which is sort of open out there. I can share something of that sort of link probably, maybe which may probably help in the evaluation front. Something that is consumable by any layperson. So yeah, that is something I also face a challenge a lot.
Thank you very much, Shashidhar. And Kayla, we, as also like a developing professional in the field, we feel you in this aspect of, feeling underqualified, but you also have to acknowledge that the field itself is constantly changing. The more complex our context is, which is getting more and more complex day by day, and it's changing day by day, there's actually you do not have any other choice but to constantly keep developing, and that's how you actually become future fit, just learning that discipline of always learning and always exploring, as Zach has mentioned, not just in AI or technology, but also in emerging thoughts, theories, or methodologies and approaches within the field, is something that is a constant, essentially, as an evaluator. So thank you, Sushidhar. Sushidhar also shared the link in the chat. Our production team will probably help communicate this link to you, Kyla, back to the LinkedIn comment section. Dr. Ruchi, go ahead.
Yeah, actually, one of my mentor was at Michigan State University. She was a faculty there, and over there, there are, because 4H program is in US, so there are a lot of program evaluation courses that are available, and they are very much aligned with the American Evaluation Association. So you can explore that opportunity as well.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ruchi. Yeah. So if it helps you, again, like you can also reach out to our panelists as well. I'm sure they also all welcome such such messages on LinkedIn. If you could like reach out to us and connect us in there. Shashidhar also added that JPAL courses are also good. If you might as well drop some websites, Better Evaluation is also good. Global Evaluation Initiative, they also have resources on annual basis. They host webinars. G-Local Webinar Week, Local Week, and so on. Of course, here in Eval for Action website, every dialogue that we have, the resources are also always available there. And then, of course, like there are courses that you can also access for free. I understand that some of them might be paid or behind paywalls. Some of them you can access, for free if you just look into, again, like regional evaluation networks. More often than not, their web pages offer resources on that, and I hope that helps, Kayla. Okay, I think that's a good way to end our Q&A and audience reflection section, as we are approaching the end of this dialogue. So just to finish our dialogue for today, we will do a quick comment round. So to our three panelists and to our youth and evaluation champion, perhaps, you could all share a quick 60-second takeaway or one actionable piece of advice to help shape the future of evaluation. Kathleen, perhaps you could go with you first.
Thanks. I mean, I think I'd just like to, ask everyone to keep in mind that I think we're living in a time where using data for decision making is more important than it ever has been before. Inequality is unparalleled. We have an existential threat to humanity in the climate crisis. These are not small issues. And sometimes when organizations are framing the questions they want you to answer, it's easy to lose track of that. So I think through continually connecting the dots, reminding yourself of contexts, questioning assumptions, being curious about people's motivations, that is how evaluation is going to be able to make sure each small project is contributing to this bigger data system that we all need actually to solve the challenges that we'll have in the future.
Okay, I'll go next. Uh, so yeah, I'm gonna close with the same lines I started with. Like, I think try to see how close you stand, close to the work that's happening on the ground, how well you connect the people around it, and how much you give back to the field, how much you become a part of this ecosystem that enables you much further. So yeah, that's what I want to live with. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shashidhar. Over to you, Zach.
Thank you. I love what everything has been said today. Everyone has said today, and I love exactly as Caitlin mentioned. It's been reinforcing and complementing one another. I think that if you've been paying attention, you have a lot of ideas on how to prepare yourself, how to prepare others, in terms of the future of evaluation, the constellation of skill sets. Dr. Rushi had some great insights in terms of applying that at the university level, but also at those kind of interpersonal level. And I appreciate everything that's been said. I think for me, if I could wrap up what my encouragement would be is to develop a critical AI literacy, right? Which is this ability to question taken for granted knowledge about technology, about how this technology is showing up in our lives, about how it's showing up in our profession, and hopefully take these skills to have young professionals, emerging evaluators to shape the profession and to not let AI shape the profession. And so I think that part of that comes from that experimentation, marring your face by getting in the arena and testing, verifying, and again, not ceding to the machines that human judgment, as Dr. Rushi mentioned, and allowing us to really further deepen our evaluative reasoning skills and our capacities there, again, so that we can be shaping our profession and not being shaped by that.
Thank you, Zach. And then Dr. Ruchi.
Yeah, if academia can successfully bring together theory, technology, practice, purpose, then I feel we will not just simply educate evaluators. We'll be able to nurture a generation of professionals who have this confidence to question assumptions, who have the courage to innovate responsibility, and who also have the wisdom to use this evidence for public good. So, let's stop thinking of our classrooms as places where evaluation is taught. We need to transform them, I would say, to spaces where evaluation is lived. So, where students, they just don't work, they don't just come to graduate, where AI is explored with ethics, where, problems becomes where failures become learning, where evidence become action, and where young evaluators, they become co-creators of, I would say, better policy and also sustainable development. Because ultimately, when you look at it, the future of evaluation will I don't feel it will be defined by the questions we answer, but it will be defined by the questions we dare to ask. And that is something very important for an evaluator. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ruchi. And thank you to all of our speakers for constantly bringing your unique perspectives in sharing your insights and your thoughts as we hold this dialogue. So as we conclude, we ask all of our audience and we invite everyone to carry this energy back, either to cultivate again your thirst to become future fit as evaluators yourselves, or bring it back to your own networks and communities to ensure that the next generation of evaluators is equipped to navigate the uncertainty that we are facing today and drive inclusive, more empathetic, and future-oriented change. So thank you very much to our panelists. So as we wrap up, we also want to thank our partners and to all of you, to our audience, who have joined this vibrant conversation. As a reminder, this is only the first dialogue of the second season of the Future of Evaluation Dialogue series. So please stay tuned to the next one at evalforaction.org. And if you wish to stay up to date on all of the Eval for Action news and events and the next episode of this series, make sure to subscribe to the Eval for Action monthly newsletter. Lastly, to help us improve and provide the best experience possible throughout the dialogue series, we have a very brief 2-question survey. And so we would love to hear your thoughts and suggestions for our future episodes. Once again, on behalf of Eval for Action, our guest speakers, and the organizing team, thank you again for joining us today, and we hope to see you in the next one. Goodbye and have a great day.